We were somewhere in the vastness of the Midwest, the open road stretching out like an endless black ribbon under the night sky. I was behind the wheel, my girlfriend Jenny beside me, her feet propped up on the dashboard, humming along to the classic rock station playing low on the radio. We were chasing ghosts and legends, the thrill of the unknown pulling us from one haunted place to another. It was just supposed to be a fun road trip, a way to indulge our shared love of the paranormal. The sun had long since disappeared behind the horizon, leaving us alone with the dark. There was something exhilarating about the emptiness, the way the road seemed to swallow us up, promising secrets and stories untold. We had just left a tiny, God-forsaken town where an old woman claimed her house was haunted by the ghost of her dead husband. The stories were as dusty and worn as the woman herself, but we listened, intrigued by the flicker of fear in her eyes. "Do you believe any of it?" Jenny asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. "I don't know," I replied, keeping my eyes on the road. "Maybe. It's hard to tell what's real and what's just a story after a while." She nodded, her gaze drifting out the window. "Yeah, but it makes for a hell of a road trip." We laughed, the sound echoing in the confines of the car, a small bubble of light and life in the sea of darkness. But then, the laughter died in our throats as we saw him. Standing in the middle of the road was a clown, not the kind you see at children's birthday parties or in circus tents. No, this clown was something out of a nightmare. His face was painted in grotesque, smeared white makeup, a gash of red slashing across his mouth in a permanent, sinister grin. His clothes were tattered, dirty, and he wore a floppy hat that had seen better days. But it was his eyes that froze my blood. They were wide, almost bulging, and there was something in them that spoke of madness. "Jesus Christ! What the hell is that?" Jenny's voice was a whisper, a thread of fear winding through it. "I don't know," I said, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "But we're not sticking around to find out." I swerved to avoid him, the tires screeching on the asphalt. As we sped past, I caught a glimpse of his eyes following us, that twisted grin never faltering. I glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting him to be gone, a figment of our imagination. But he was still there, standing in the middle of the road, watching us. "Did you see that?" Jenny asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw it." We drove in silence for a while, the tension in the car thick and suffocating. I tried to shake off the feeling of those eyes on us, but it clung to me like a shadow. I turned the radio up, hoping the music would drown out the unease. But then, a few miles down the road, we saw him again. The same clown, standing in the middle of the road, waiting for us. My heart pounded in my chest, and I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt just a few feet away from him. "How the hell did he get here?" Jenny's voice was high-pitched, panic seeping into her words. "I don't know," I said, my mind racing. "Maybe it's a different clown." But I didn't believe it. I could see the same wildness in his eyes, the same twisted grin. It was him. "Let's just get out of here," Jenny said, her voice pleading. I nodded, throwing the car into reverse, but before I could move, the clown started walking towards us. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife, the blade glinting in the headlights. "Go!" Jenny screamed, and I didn't need to be told twice. I floored it, the car lurching backward before I spun it around and sped off into the night. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him chasing us. But he was gone. For a while we drove in silence, the fear slowly ebbing away as the miles put distance between us and the clown. But then, just as we were starting to relax, he appeared again. This time, he was standing by the side of the road, his head tilted to one side as he watched us pass. "This can't be happening," Jenny said, her voice barely more than a whisper. There's no way he could be ahead of us, I said, my mind struggling to make sense of it. It's impossible. Maybe he's not real, she said, clutching my arm. Maybe we're seeing things. But I knew he was real. The fear in my gut told me he was real. We kept driving, the tension in the car so thick it was hard to breathe. The road seemed endless, stretching out into the darkness, and no matter how far we went, the clown was always there, waiting for us. We saw him at least half a dozen times, each time more terrifying than the last. Finally, we couldn't take it anymore. I pulled over at a rest stop, hoping there would be other people around, some safety in numbers. But the place was deserted, the buildings dark and empty. Let's just stay here until morning, Jenny said, her voice shaking. Maybe he'll go away. I nodded, too exhausted to argue. We locked the doors and tried to get some sleep, but every sound, every creak of the car set my nerves on edge. I kept seeing his face, those eyes, that grin, every time I closed my eyes. At some point I must have dozed off because I woke to the sound of Jenny screaming. I sat up, my heart racing, and saw the clown outside the car, his face pressed against the window, his knife tapping on the glass. "Go away!" Jenny screamed, pounding on the window. But he just grinned, his eyes boring into mine. I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get them into the ignition. Finally, the car roared to life, and I floored it, the tires screeching as we sped away. But it was too late. The clown was gone, but he had left his mark. Jenny was never the same after that night. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything without seeing his face. And then, one day, she was gone. I found her in the bathroom. The clown had been here. A smeared, grotesque illustration of the clown's face was painted on the shower curtain.